the brave ones, the last session of the day. How has the streaming summit been? Good? I think it's been awesome. Always is, of course. Well, excellent. Well, thank you for coming. So my name is Mark Donegan, and as you heard us doing our mic check, you should be in the right room because we said it 4 times. The name of this session. This is live sports streaming where content rights and streaming technology collide. So we're going to have a really fabulous discussion, and I'm joined by an amazing group of panelists. I would like you to introduce yourselves, and then let's get into a lively conversation here. So James, why don't you go first?
I can. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. Excuse my voice. 2 days into NAB, it starts to wane somewhat, so apologies. Yeah, my name's James Burt. I'm SVP of Broadcast Products at JW Player. I think everybody knows JW Player. We've been in the market since about 2007. Probably what people don't know is probably in the last 10 years, we're more of a platform than a player. So very much our platform is live streaming, VOD streaming, live to VOD, DRM, SSAI. So we're very much an end-to-end platform for broadcasters. And we've got customers that stretch right across the broadcast vertical. So from tier 1 public broadcasters like ITV, VRT in Belgium, all the way down to more niche sports. So the Cowboy Channel or Poker Go. So we really sort of go from small to big. So we have a really, really varied customer base. But it's really good to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Lucho.
Of course. Hi, everyone. I am Luciano Escudero, Lucho. Actually, everyone can tell me Lucho. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm the VP of Engineering of all the media group within Globant, representing actually Globant and Sportian, which is one of our latest initiative within the sport arena. As a Globant company, we were born in 23 in Argentina. We are a professional service company. Last year, we started doing a very heavily investment within the sport arena, bringing logos working with us, but also through our initiative called Sportian, together with La Liga. So you're going to listen some of the experience that we're collecting through work with FIFA, La Liga, NFL, MLB, some of the biggest one in the sport is actually part of our group of customers.
I'm Rob Gelick. 15 years in the past 15 years in the space, always working on sports-related programming as part of my broader purview. Most recently, I was the Chief Product Officer at Paramount, but early on in my days, CBS Mobile, I think I carved my teeth initially with March Madness on Demand, offering that as a platform. First ones doing streaming of live games down to the iPhone, all the way through launching what was originally CBS All Access and the transformation of that into Paramount Plus, scaled that but I'd say that whole household service into a kind of global product from 0 subs to 67 million subs worldwide and in 40 markets. And sports has been a big component of that
Awesome.
Throughout.
Yeah, it's great. So you can see that this is a diverse, working in different parts of the ecosystem. Our speakers are going to be able to, I think, really provide some excellent context as to what's happening, where we're going, what to be thinking about. I thought it'd be useful to split our conversation today into sort of the what I'm calling the vendor view, and then the content owner or the platform, so in other words, vendors, those of us sitting in the room who, sell technology services or somehow involved in providing what's required to actually get content out. And then for those that are actually a platform, or if you're part of a league or a team, or you're kind of looking at this. So we're going to start with the vendor view. And I find it so interesting that the rights are being so heavily disrupted right now, meaning that it's moved off the very traditional, well-known, well-established platforms, broadcast, pay TV, into, now it's like where do I watch the game tonight? And we're going to get into that as a challenge, I think, from the consumer side. But that coincides with now just consumer behavior going to OTT. And so why don't we start the conversation with, what are even the unique needs of live sports, over other streaming workflows? So we're saying that where content rights and streaming technology collide. So maybe we should start, and each of you can give your, real world examples and perspectives on why is this, how is it different? How is live sports on OTT different than operating a VOD service? Or, that's probably a good place to start. So
I can jump in there. So live, the way I always look at it is you get one chance with live. So you have to remember, with VOD, you get loads of chances. Yeah. Live, you get one chance. So for me, the key thing is reliability. It has to work. There is no second chance. It has to work. So one of the things that, we focus on a lot is that reliability. It's making sure that it's always available. Mm-hmm. If there's a problem downstream, you can handle it, you can manage it. So for me, one of the key things in a live platform is reliability. But I think then there's a second piece to this, which is also flexibility. With the way that the market is changing at the moment, we really, really need to have flexible solutions. So we need to be able to offer live to VOD. We need to be able to offer multiple monetization techniques. So I think having a solution that's both flexible and reliable is sort of super critical in my view.
I'm gonna allow me to disagree a little bit. So reliable is for sure number one for T1 sport events. We are seeing a very large trends to start experimenting on T2 and T3 events. Means that like juniors games that actually can be streaming and experimenting into the market. So the reliability piece is for sure number one priority for Final of Champions, Final of World Cups, everything that is actual events, but everything that is experimenting is a lot of things coming now to the market that actually is using T2 events. Examples are like, if I'm gonna do like a literally production events in the cloud, they are not gonna use a T1, they're gonna use T2 because they know the number of users are not gonna be that much impacted. They can fail on it. They test, they fail, and they go, they move forward. So I see like a big trends like trying to be very reliable on T1, but I think the market is mature enough today. We were able to stream 10 million users in India like months ago. So I think the market is able to support it, good, bad and good stuff, or even throw a lot of computing on it, but it's able to manage. I think there is a little bit right now how we experimenting with other leagues, with other type of sport events to kind of unblock less cost, better use of resources, and actually start experimenting a little bit with the market. Also, we have a very good case about Major League Rugby. Major League Rugby is very small here in the US. It's really small. But they get a OTT. Back in the days, they were trying to experimenting through kind of a product that is on the market. But they couldn't actually start kind of thinking on how they can monetize more. They can add a little bit more advertisement, how they can do SSAI instead of client-server ad insertion. So there was a lot of conversations on what the Major League Rugby want to do based on what is actually their plan in the next 5-10 years. And it's a really good niche where you say, yes, it's a league that is studying. You can experimenting with them. Let's go there. So that is actually one of the things that we are seeing in the market right now is experimenting for leagues that they are not that being impacted and don't screw up with T1 games.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the comments around reliability. I think that goes without saying. Maybe more particular in live because you only get one chance, and if the feed goes out at a bad moment, then of course especially if you're paying for a service, there's a lot of pushback. But I would say it's interesting that there's different operational challenges, and as a streamer also, you have these really limited opportunities. So like take the Masters or the Super Bowl or even March Madness, someone's coming in for a game, you'd like to think that if they're a new subscriber, that they plan for that ahead of time, but typically they don't. Yeah. And so people promoting live and where you see a lot of the market getting in trouble is if they don't plan for these peak signups where you have, like in a very compressed window, like a minute or two, a massive amount of people coming into the service. And that impacts everything, not just your video workflow, but how quickly you can write to your database to get someone registered, what kind of traffic is coming. Typically you have bad actors at those times, leaning in to try to deliberately tip you over. There's a bunch there. I would say the second bucket, which is really interesting, is the life cycle of someone coming in for a live event may be very short. And if you're invested very heavily in sports as a vehicle, maybe if it's the beginning of a season like the NFL season, you have a good chance that they're going to stick around for the whole season. But if you have one moment on a key marquee event, how do you capture that person and expose them, let's say as a whole household service, but not just a dedicated sports service, to something that they're not going to churn right away and you can keep them in the service? Yeah,
there's a couple really key points that stand out to me in the comments here. Rob, I'm going to start with a few things that you're pointing out. And if I recall correctly, I think and maybe you know this, I think Amazon paid $100 million for the game after Thanksgiving for the football game they streamed.
I'm not going to comment on how much.
Okay. Anyway, and I'm sure there's somebody who'll fact check me on that, but that's what comes to mind. And you think about that, and you think about, okay, Netflix has many, many shows that, that are $100 million to produce, and yet that may be for, 8 episodes or something. This is for a 2-hour window of time, or a 3-hour window of time, like $100 million. Like you've got to capitalize. I mean, that is the event. The value of it, talk about long tail, an hour after the game's over, like it's pretty. And so this is a major difference in how you build, to what Globant does, build experiences, right? You talked about monetization and both looking for new ways to monetize, but like, how do I get more than $100 million of value out of those 2 hours? That's quite a difference. I want to springboard on this this first question, go into the operations side, and we'll have some, we'll unpack this at a couple different points, but let's talk about the OpEx versus CapEx and what is happening on the cost front, because I think there's also a very interesting shift that's happening right now in the way that architectures are being built. And let's face it, as Dan pointed out in his opening keynote, it comes down to the P&L. And there is nobody in the industry who is immune. The days of writing checks and financing and one day those are over. So what's happening and what are the perspectives? You're a platform, so you're on the OpEx side, right? You have been a content distributor and, Rob, and I know you're working with, both sides. People are building D2C and services. So talk to us about what is happening there, in terms of just even let's start by just the perspective. Like, is this all just CapEx? I'm doing it in the cloud. I'm paying for use, and everything's good. Or
I think I can start if you want.
No,
it depends on where your customer is coming. If it is a sport organization, yes, it's actually coming with higher cost in building and providing a live ops operation more than the product. But the complaint is going to be coming anyway. They are not used. Sport leagues, they are not used to get media products running for the D2C experience. Now, if the question mark come from media customers, they know how to deal with it. They are actually really prepared for it. So we run workup helping one of our customers, a local one doing for US 40 Pan American people. And they were really prepared. They forecast mostly all the costs that they're gonna get during the entire workup. Now we go to the sport leagues, they don't. They are actually complaining like end of the games, they start getting bills about cloud, consumption, commitment, and they start kind of getting involved. So there is just a small portion of sport organizations they are mature enough that I'm seeing in the market right now, being able to be well organized. Right now, we are seeing like a very good trends, like they are getting into, but they are not there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're talking about media companies. Typically, they're mature enough to think about the glass to glass experience. And what I mean by that is like, the camera at the event, in production, all that's involved. I mean, talk about capital intensive, getting crews there, then setting up those feeds. How do you acquire that signal all the way through to someone's living room TV if you're providing the end-to-end experience. So, capital operation costs are baked into there, but they're all very well kind of premeditated. I think one of the trends to look out for is actually where that intersects with software development these days. And most sophisticated streamers do capitalize their software development as well, where you have the same construct of developing a system that depreciates over time, just like a physical server or hardware would. And as that ages, and has that approach around specific programs. And it's allowed some more flexibility within the financing to, frankly, bring in partners like the two that are sitting here in order to help you with that. And you're treating it as a specific program that has some capital cost to it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, from our perspective, cost is key at the moment. Everybody's tightening their belts, not spending the money. So some of the things that we are being asked to do a lot more is be more sort of flexible with our solutions, that we spin everything down when they're not being used, save on the cost. So I think for us as a platform, it's being clever about what you need and when you need it, and then allowing us to sort of give that cost saving back to the customer and being flexible with our pricing so they're not paying for something they're not using. So I think it's just having that, I say earlier, flexible, adaptable approach to respect that people may not have that big CapEx up front and OpEx works better for them. So certainly from us, that's what we see.
And actually, it's a good point, the one I say glass to glass. So we have one specific case that we're working right now. Everyone that knows that we work with FIFA. Part of the products that they are kind of developing, which is FIFA Plus, they have multiple type of inputs. One of them could be games for different member associations that are really low quality. And when he mentioned glass to glass, it's literally people with the same phone in the field, like nothing else. And you're not talking about like places where they have 5G. So when you think about how you solve that issue between that glass coming to the end user, which, they're not gonna, it's not that much user that they stream, but they want to actually see that working well. You need to actually ensure that you have a team prepared to talk to the person that is on the field, tell them that they need to configure SRT protocol in a specific way, checking that the audio is coming out properly. So all that is actually human interaction and cost. And that is the reason why I was telling you is, if you think about T1, you have a producer company who is actually everything prepared, everything. When you go to T2, you're gonna get enough those that you need to start kind of forecasting and think how you're solving. This is where technology pieces start getting in. We need to build components that are flexible enough in order to get both pieces. It's the T1s, but also the all others.
So this is super fascinating because, the title is, where content rights and streaming collide, around sports. And there's been examples for a number of years now of like in stadium where somebody could be in a stadium on their phone, seeing camera views on the field, or maybe even curated fans. I think there's some apps out there, but you're talking about someone with a cell phone. So is that actually footage that's going to go to broadcast, or is that this alternative experience that someone might be wanting to curate?
The cases that I actually meaning is actually really end users, but not the one that is actually from like the one watching. Is actually the one broadcast.
Is it FIFA?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
But it's actually a real person, like one in the field broadcasting, like a game, doing the whole moves, sending directly to the cloud, transcoding and streaming to end users without passing any producer in the middle. But if you multiply by that 200 games per weekend, either you need 200 people actually attending each of the ones that are in each of the fields, which is impossible. Language, culture, It's everything around that allows you to do. If you don't build technology components that give them the facility to do that integrations easily, you're going to be dealing with literally 200 people who's on the phone trying to make your connection into the glass to glass.
You brought up the quality issue of thinking about someone capturing at a phone of a game. I mean, certainly if you walk the floor, there's a lot of folks focused on quality. That's always been persistent as part of this, certainly when it comes to live sports. I'm doing some work with IMAX, and it's definitely worth stopping by to see how they're approaching it, because I think it's really, they have a Stream Smart and Stream Aware product. And what they've said is, like, especially in the live space, they're like, okay, what's happening? If you're a streamer, you're usually trying to push what is the maximum, highest quality that I can get to a user that their device will support in the bandwidth they have. And what they're seeing as part of this cost equation is that a lot of streamers are pushing unnecessary bits across networks that cost them tens of millions of dollars, where they're over optimizing for things that aren't perceivable by users of being a higher quality. So they have an AI platform that does a human-related scoring of your stream so that you can come down to a level where you're not over-delivering. Like, is too much quality a thing? And I think it is, where you're dialing back the quality just to the level where people can't perceive that there's any drop in it. But that material saving, if that's 5%, 10%, 15% of your data costs, is incredible for operators. And I think everybody knows that streamers are looking to where they can save costs today. That'll be a big part. Where you'll see.
I want to go down this path a little bit further, because this then gets into, well, what about next generation codecs? Is that one way to achieve it? Maybe doing 1080p 60 instead of 4K 60 is or 1080p 60 with HDR, which, by the way, a lot of the recent high-profile sporting events, that's what they were. And in fact, even when there were 4K, that was actually upscaled, 1080p. So what are you all seeing? Both are people just going to adopt AV1 or advanced, VVC, or something that's going to do a better job? Are they?
I mean, from my
approaching other ways?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, 4K comes up little. I mean, the amount of 4K streaming we do is very, very small.
And yet so I'm going to ask the questions I have to. I mean, your platform's fully capable of supporting 4K. So it's not,
fully
in other words,
capable
technically you're ready to go.
Technically we can do it. We just don't. For whatever reason, 1080p at 60, it's good. It's good enough for most of the customers that we have, and that's ranging all the way from the tier ones all the way down to the smaller ones. I do feel there is this thing, we got to be 4K. You've got to do 4K. Why?
I see Rob smiling. So either you totally agree, or you're like, I don't.
No, I mean, I agree in that there was a great branding story around 4K.
Sure.
And I think that those types of brands it has power in the consumer's mind as meaning quality. And I think there are many brands that are playing in that space. I think you're talking about the reality, what's out there. Like James is basically saying, you can support an up-res to 4K, so you say you have it, but a lot of sports production, they're not there shooting in 4K.
Correct.
And so what you're doing, back to my earlier point, is you're up-resing to a higher quality that is not providing any consumer benefit, right? And what you're doing, though, is you're doing the exact opposite you want to do in streaming, which is push an unnecessarily fat stream through, limited pipes.
And spending a lot of money doing it.
I think that's shifting now. I think people are getting a little smarter.
People are getting savvy to that. And, and I'll make the observation, and if anybody's kind of wondering about this yourself, scalers inside TVs today are really good.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you really do and it's a lot of work to really be able to visually evaluate, but you can look at an upscaled 1080p that you stream, that you encode and run through your whole pipeline and stream out, and then look at just what the TV would do with a 1080p. And in some cases, the TV is going to do ultimately a better job because you could afford to send 6 megabits, 1080p 60, or 7 or 7.5 megabits instead of 15 or 20 megabits 4K, which is going to. So anyway, just a little side commentary there, based on what I've seen. This is super interesting. So staying with our kind of what does this mean for an OTT service? So we're still kind of in the vendor side of our discussion here. So someone selling tools, selling technologies, selling products. What are the unique needs, of a live sports infrastructure, and where are there existing products and solutions that can be fully deployed, and where do we need to be looking, at some areas? And Rob, I actually want to start with you because you have the perspective of being in the field, out there delivering content. Sure. And where did you say, I've got to go build this because it doesn't really exist what I need? Yeah. So give some pointers here.
I think most streamers today have what I would describe as a patchwork quilt of third-party tech and homegrown solutions. And if you look across the board, you probably would be hard-pressed to find like an end-to-end video workflow that is actually the same. But the good thing about that is that means there's a bunch of really flexible tools out there where you don't have to conform to a set standard or architecture or platform or singular technology anymore. And that diversity breeds innovation, competition, and really creative solutions today. So, I would argue that most aren't even set, even if you've invested. Sometimes there's a pride thing in a system that you've built, and then you need it at that time because no vendor had that in the marketplace. Moving off of that sometimes is more of a cultural element within your organization that you're like, hey, by the way, this one thing that was niche that we were ahead of everybody on, there's now a couple vendors, and look, they have 300 people working on just this one element. Do you really want to continue investing in this, or is it time to change? So I think people are hot swapping technology. I do not think it happens quickly. I think they're very well tested, they're calculated, but the opportunity to have both third-party sourced and ingrown and internally built tech is certainly the trend that I see.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of have I like to call it a best of breed approach. If you break your live streaming solution down, you'll have encoders, you'll have a packager, you'll have various components. And I think the way we've looked at that is some are better than others. Some can do things that others can't do. But we've gone with a best of breed approach, and very much it's pulling from various third parties, bringing them in, adding your own API and wrappers around them, and then joining them together. And that for us has worked really well. It means we're not solely reliant on one vendor. There are a lot of streamers out there that are all in one technology stack, and sometimes that locks you in and is very difficult to get out of. So we like to have a more modular approach where, hey, look, if this isn't working for us, we'll rip that bit out and we'll pop another one back in. And I think, again, that allows you to keep up with the latest trends and the latest technologies.
I think when we always talk about media workflows, we always need an orchestration, and this is what is happening today. So, like maybe a year or 2 years ago, we see live streaming sport being end-to-end. Right now, we see people start experimenting, as he was saying, like pieces by pieces. And there is also another component on top of that. It's actually cloud guys are not making our life easier. So they are actually competing each other for sport organization. So we ended up seeing pipelines running on specific clouds, and then another clouds show up, start getting conversations, and then we need to start seeing how we switch. If the solution actually is a cloud-native solution, then that company needs to actually redo the entire pipeline. So it's the reality. So it's pieces by piece, as James was saying. with an orchestration on top of it, and see how that actually can be reliant. The only thing that we are also like start observing on it is the monitoring and the quality piece on top of it. I think at least for what we are still looking, we are a little bit immature in doing proper monitoring on this type of workflows.
Yeah.
The opposite to what is the normal media supply chain workflow that we are really good across the board in the industry. I think in the sport, we still have a pathway to do it.
So I realized I didn't say it in the intro. We will do a Q&A. So if you have questions, jot them down or just don't forget it. And we will open up at the end here. So let's talk about, or the question I have, is what are the roles, of technology in delivering new and differentiated experiences? Because, and we touched on this in the beginning, you said, teams are looking for ways to monetize more, and everybody is. Some of that is just more effective ad fulfillment. Sometimes ad fill rates are bad. And it's like, geez, if I can increase my ad fill rate 20%, it's like, there you go. But there's sports betting, there's, interactive, there's all kinds of, messaging and fan experiences, I like to call it. Lucho, I know Globant, has built some really high profile apps and do you have any, comments about what is either out there or what is coming or what people should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think I will try to take the story by two pieces. One of them is start experimenting with the concept of fast channels on the sport, but it's not an easy one. I'm gonna say why. Because when you start actually thinking on streaming a play-out linear channel, there is a specific region that is focused on, and rights are differently. So if you're streaming one channel, let's say in a Spanish channel, and then if you need to intersect that specific timeline to put a game, you actually downstream, you need to have one pipeline running in Spanish. So there is no other way. So fast in a play-out concept is getting money, but it's getting the challenge from in order to solve it. That is one. And the second one, coming to the T2 events where people start experimenting with, I think we are seeing some good trends on the betting concept. The concept where I can actually make betting in real time with the most closest low latency that can be actually achieved. But with the limit of what target platform you want to do. So if you want to do betting, are you going to be doing in your connected TV? No, you're not. You're going to be doing on web or mobile, where actually the SDK are ready to do it. So we're doing some good pieces, but limiting by technology today that is going to be solving out, but we still seeing some time to work on it.
So I want to ask you about sports betting because Dan did an interview with CDN 77 earlier today, and the observation was made that everybody's talking about it, nobody's actually doing it.
Yeah.
Now, that perhaps was maybe a more European or North American centric view. Actually, the conversation was a little more broad, so I don't know. But people are talking about it, a lot of conversation. There's vendors showing, and that's kind of their main use case for ultra low latency. Is this going to actually get implemented? Are we all going to be watching the game and betting alongside the game in some way?
My take on it on a personal level is, it'll be interesting to see what is actually permitted based on compliance.
Yeah.
And what it looks like industry-wide is trending that those can be parallel experiences, but there's limited ability to interact.
Okay.
So if you look at many of the sports-centric streamers today, they will surface something like, here's the 2 or 3 prop bets that you can make based on this game. Maybe they promote a betting companion app experience and they have a preferred one to do that, but you're not actually transacting in the same experience as like, oh, this is my streaming provider where I'm watching the game.
I see.
I'm not sure that's going to change anytime soon, specifically for North America on that. But you can see pretty much across the board, most dedicated sports experiences include links to go get it. They'll give you the odds or the chances of something, and then encourage you to go out and take action within a dedicated betting app.
Yeah, they're naming them like the interactive piece right now. It's not like betting in playback; it's interactive piece. So yeah, 100%.
That's a very good insight, because I think the implication is like, oh, I'm going to be the TV screen, the big screen. That's where all my experience is going to live. And I think you're right. Well, not I think, it's pretty clear that governments are want to closely control that and regulate it. So
coming to the low latency point, which I think is a good one. I think we're seeing mature products, or at least some good one on the market today doing low latency.
Okay, so let's go there, because there also seems to be a bit of a debate or discussion around how you monetize it and whether the consumer is really willing to pay for it, and then even what the additional cost is. So tell us what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get low latency a lot. I mean, our latency, the old traditional HLS latency is like anything up to 35, 40 seconds, horrible.
Yeah.
I think most reasonable IP streamers now would get to 10 to 12 as a norm, which is okay for most things. As soon as you start getting into the sports space, though, then it becomes challenging at 10 to 12. I mean, we have not embraced low latency yet. It's a thing that we're thinking about.
Can you quickly, so when you say low latency, is that like LLHLS, LL dash, or is it just focusing on optimizing? Because there's different approaches there too.
Yeah, so
there's a standard, and then there's just technical work.
For us, it's poking each piece of the chain and optimizing rather than adopting LLHLS or LL dash. So we're looking at using specific HTTP protocols in between things that are multi-threaded rather than single-threaded. We're doing other clever things where we're really turning the screw on HLS and dash as much as we can and trying to. So it's more, I would say it's more us tweaking our own solutions rather than adopting maybe one of the standards that's out there. Purely because I think the support is not quite there for it, and that creates more challenges.
Lucho.
Yeah, we are experimenting the same. We also see a little bit of playground with the CMAF itself across the board, using as the low latency protocol. But it's also true that there is one good of my college here that identified one of the products that we're working. It's also true that in order to get a low latency, you can also reduce computing on the edge and then just making more traffic during the side to side. So if you think about doing late transcoding or doing a large batch of transcoding into the edge, your actually low latency is going to be much better. But that means that you're going to consume more traffic. So it's actually like we are seeing a good amount of experimentation on that side, that is going to unblock some of the low latency in the next 12, 18 months.
Yeah. Rob, what's your view?
I think it's interesting. I think in the sports streaming space specifically, the construct of time management is something that you see most streamers tackling head on. And I'm going to take it at a much higher, like bring it up 50,000 feet. You think about spoilers, most quality, streaming sports experience, prompt users like the UI has, like if you come in mid-game or mid-match, they give you the scores. You can choose to turn that off, as a feature, so that if you're coming in late and browsing, the first thing you don't see is like where the game is. What's becoming more and more commonplace are the ability to start over, catch up on key plays, like managing that construct of latency because of, I think a lot of when people are coming into these experiences. A lot of international content hitting the US, for instance. So you have matches that are evening matches hitting morning here. And you have a lot of non-live viewing, more so than there has been ever before, especially around, soccer, football, whatever you call it, as one of those titles. And so it's getting more and more complicated in the space, but I think there is some great innovation both for consumer-facing pieces and on the platform side to manage that.
It's interesting. All right. Well, this has been good. Well, let's pivot to the platform content, owner view. So kind of talking, the vendor side. So let's talk about the platform. And it's interesting, Andy Jassy just put out his Amazon's shareholder letter 3-4 days ago. A lot of interesting things in there, but he is, I think he has increasing conviction, or Amazon does, on Amazon Prime, that it's going to be a large and profitable standalone business. Now, the reason why I talk about them, I'm not trying to pick out Amazon Prime, but Amazon, it's no secret, has been super aggressive in sports rights. And I don't think any of us would believe that they're going to be slowing down, or, they're really committed to this. So, I think it sets up it's like a case study, right? Where, Amazon Prime, for a lot of us, we enjoyed the video, the content, at least from my perspective, is really great. I enjoy it. I find myself going there a lot. But with the sports, now it's like it's becoming the destination, Thursday night football and everything else that they're licensing. And I just wonder, are we going to start to see where sports is going to make these VOD services, because now you have Netflix, right, getting into live, and everybody basically. So is this going to make these platforms more sticky? Is it going to help with churn reduction? Because someone might be like, my favorite shows aren't on. I'm not going to call somebody out, but service A, but guess what? I do watch my, whatever, my favorite team on there, so I'm not going to drop it. What do what do we think about that? And
yeah, I'm biased, obviously, like the strategy even back when we launched CBS All Access.
Give us the inside view.
Yeah, in its earliest form, what we did is we knew that we were a small player in the space at the time. We had to, in order to tap into some of the biggest content investments of the network, was to actually use the linear broadcast feed.
Yeah.
And the technology challenge at that point is like really moving broadcast, which was 214 local live stations, onto IP and serving it in a way on the internet like it was done in the traditional distribution model. But what that did is opened up the chance for the organization to really reach its maximum potential on those investments, right? So if you wanted Masters and March Madness and the NFL and even other live events like the Grammys, right? You started to invest in that. And over time, what happened is, we were one of very few people offering a hybrid model of both ad-supported and, commercial-free experiences, which in recent years, you see more and more of the market moving to, including Amazon.
That's right.
And I think, sports in how it's formatted inherently opens opportunities for sponsorships at levels that are deeper than you see in most programming today, right? You have a huge halftime show, you have a pregame, you have a postgame, big production in and around it. Sponsors
the big
and
brands
are everywhere.
love this, the big sponsors, they love it.
Yeah, so if you come in and you're a
logo
platform like Amazon moving to this hybrid solution, you have an incredibly powerful ad-supported, offering with hyper-targeting and really allowing advertisers to reach the very specific core demos and targeting. It makes sense to bring sports into the mix because the format's perfect for it. And typically what they've invested are these big, high-profile events where you can really bring in big audiences and offset some of that initial growth risk with their core business, right? Because they have many businesses that are wrapped in around that. it allows that investment to come without Prime needing to bear that burden, I would guess, up front themselves.
I have like a question mark. It is how those streaming OMPBDs actually are going to be able to sort it out the rights moving forward. The broadcast in the past, it was really easy for them to negotiate. They just negotiate local rights. That's it, simple. I go to NFL, I negotiate local rights in the States, and I distribute them. Now Amazon Prime or Apple TV coming in, they need to actually go and negotiate. So I want to distribute this game on this region, this game on this region. That increased the complexity of the rights a lot. And even for the sport organizations, because right now sports organizations, they're fighting for those rights. So they're going to try to not make exclusive rights. They're going to try to say, okay, you're distributing in Brazil. I'm going to also distribute in Brazil. How Amazon Prime, Apple TV, or some other MPBDs globally, because they have global reach, how they are actually manage that content rights across the world is a really tough workflow. It's a lot of stuff. And I didn't see nothing today that is be able to sort it out, that when you multiply regions, number of sports, potential rights, it's hundreds.
Yeah, but most streamers at this point have invested in their own live CMSs, even if that's not a product that they buy from a third party, that allows them to kind of automate the management of those games, turning on and turning off at different times, knowing that the live specific use case is subject to, overruns or early starts, and they plan for those buffers as part of it. It's also part of the reason that you see like a lot of live sports showing up as standalone events, in addition to being baked into a linear feed, because it's easier to manage those windows in a way that you would, let's just say, like an on-demand piece of content where you can promote it, it appears for that period of time, and then they transition you into something else at the end of it.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, your point is valid. I think maybe the macro is that now, if you had to worry about geos before, you're going to really have to worry about geos. But, look, Netflix has to manage this country by country. There's content they can only distribute in France. They cannot distribute in Italy. And they have built the systems to do that. So I think they'll manage it. Here's the thing, though, is that, and Dan and I talked about this on the podcast like every week, almost. The fan experience is just getting really complicated. It's like play the game of not whack-a-mole, but where's my team tonight? Like where do I watch it? What are you seeing, across your respective companies and roles and where you are in the ecosystem, or what are your just thoughts, and what are you thinking about how to, what's going to happen here? Because on one hand, it's awesome that Amazon is out signing all this content and, we have all of these rights being carved up. And yet, I kind of like the days of the old cable set-top box where, you could just go to one, and watch the game. So what are we going to do? Where are we going to be in 5 years?
I mean, how many times do you sort of sit there and try and find where the game is on it? I mean, it's crazy. You spend 30 minutes.
First thing you have to do is go to Google to be let's see, where's the game?
And you get the ones you shouldn't be pressing on. And but I mean, we're lucky in the UK. I mean, I have Sky at home, a platform, and they have a universal search on there that's actually quite cool, and it will trawl through Netflix, Prime, everything, and bring it all into one UI experience. So for me personally, my own opinion, that works, because I go to one place, I search through it, I get what I need. But that relies on a lot of people talking together and joining the dots. So I don't know where this is going to go, but I agree it's painful.
Yeah, I think you see the trend, and it's playing off the marketplace with what consumers are asking for. It wasn't that long ago where the big aggregated providers, that were, traditional distribution had everything and you could get it. And then people started to say, well, hey, I would prefer a la carte because I'm overpaying and I'm paying for all these things I don't want. and then there's the disaggregation and the birth of streaming, and now it's coming a little bit full circle. I think you see a lot of experimentation with bundles to try to solve that, and I think you're going to see more genre verticals reappear where they used to be these niche streamers, around a topic. Let's say like it's all sports. I think you've already heard there's plenty of news around people entering into that space to help solve it.
There's a JV that's being built right now.
Yeah, but content discovery is still ripe for the pickings.
Yeah.
Like have we cracked the code on the best way to find content? There was some stuff done really early on, like Clicker and some of the others, even what TV Guide was in its first incarnation in digital to help, air traffic control, where do you find what? I think most platforms have some pretty well-baked solution where they're getting feeds from all of the partners so that if you're someone who uses the universal search, that's probably the greatest success today. And if you just happen to have all those subscriptions, then there's gratitude. If you don't and you hit a dead end, then that's where some of the challenge
frustrating.
Yeah, I think coming to the universal search, which is the best tool that we get today, is just how the metadata is good enough in order to actually make the universal search workable. Because otherwise, if you're coming to a very poor metadata about just team names but not player names, it's gonna be kind of the challenge of like actually doing the discovery of those games across the world.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, any questions? Let's go to questions. All right.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, first of all. So something that's pretty interesting and I think unique to sports and streaming is the ability for athletes to kind of commandeer feeds, right? Like they can go live and they kind of take away from viewership that might be on traditional platforms. So I'm just wondering, this type of phenomenon, but this thing happening, are you guys leaning into it and finding ways to support it, or do you kind of still view it as an outlier, not really something to worry about, won't really mess up any other platform stuff? Just kind of curious as we see it growing and growing.
So I think the question was, is there other like athletes in some cases being able to create some other experience that kind of is happening or coincides with a broadcast? Like I can't think of something in the years that I was with Paramount that really took one of the major sporting events off track. If anything, I think media is always trying to partner with individual athletes as brands to see how they can augment that, right? How do you leverage the joint fandoms of those individuals, the league, a team, the media company to come together to get the audience into one place? I mean, I do see a lot of effort. That's very difficult to pull off, I think. But probably, as you pointed out in sports, most common practice is to try to bring those together in a harmonious way. So, but I haven't seen a lot of conflict and tension between those.
I think maybe one of the points could be about data sharing between sport organizations, fan activations, and what actually they are consuming. Maybe that could be like a little bit a piece of where we start seeing some tractions during right cells, that data start coming into the points, not like before. So now data is also being part of the conversations.
All right, I think one more quick question and then we're going to need to wrap, if there is one. Okay, yes.
What do you think is the final point where the leagues will stop cutting up the product, right? Okay, Thursdays go here, this team goes there, prime number dates that go there. So I'm not struggling all the time figuring out where.
Yeah.
Or like, I want to know that question.
Yeah, I know, Dan.
Is everyone going to be towing the line, seeing where people just finally call uncle to see how much they can carve it up? I just curious to what your thoughts are. Where's that microphone?
Yeah, quick thoughts on, look, I'm not going to really touch the answer to, where leagues are going with their rights and how they decide to carve them up or not. I'll say like one of the positive outputs of that, I think, has been a lot of innovation in the space. Yeah. And I do think that from a viewer perspective, there's this kind of upping the bar in terms of like what is the ideal sports experience that I would argue would not have happened without the distribution of that. Meaning like some of the stuff that YouTube TV has done in terms of their viewing experience on sports, tremendous, and started a bunch of industry norms that you see start replicating through the industry, like picking your games that you want to watch,
that's super
co-viewing, even the basics I was talking about before, like catch up on key plays. Those become tenets that one provider innovated that then the rest, you know, are rallying around to make sure they actually have the rights to do. So I think, you know, there is this element of that being a positive thing for the sports as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, okay, well, thank you. Thank you to the panelists. But stay here.
Thank you.
We have
just
a very
real quick,
special
appreciate everyone being
presentation.
here. So Eric, come up here. Actually, Will, come up too right now. So, as I mentioned this morning, the industry, well, technology is 30 years old, 3 decades. The industry's a good 26 years old. So there's a lot of people who've contributed to a lot in the industry over the years. There's a lot of people to thank for this industry existing, but there's also very few individuals who are willing to help and educate everyone else in the industry without thinking like, well, what are you paying me to do that? Who actually answer emails. That's also unheard of in the business world these days, it seems. So last year, I came up with something to give out at the New York show. Eric Black was the first recipient of that for all the work that he's done in helping to educate the market. So this year, Will Law doesn't know why he's here or what he's doing right now. He was just told to be here. But Will's gonna get an award for all the work that he's done to educate the industry over the years, especially with everything in Dash. When I think of Will Law, I think Mr. Dash. That's kind of how I think of it. If you guys don't know what Dash is, dynamic, adaptive streaming over HTTP. You've also been the Dash IF chairman for what? How many years?
Yeah, 5 or 6.
5 or 6 years. 14 years at Akamai? 16, I forgot already. 16 years at Akamai. So he's constantly educating, which is what we need more of in the industry. So I now have something I give out every year called the Dan Rayburn Streaming GOAT of the Year Award. This is what Will gets. The happy hour starts now. Will be upstairs at the happy hour. This is something he will have with him. Eric will have his as well.
All right. That's great.
So we'll be wearing these at the happy hour. Come by, get your photo with them on LinkedIn, tag them. Embarrass them. What? Can I say thank you? Yeah, come on. What, they're gonna go to the happy hour.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I just want to say thank you. It's too loud. Some of these mics are spherical or not. Okay, no, I just want to thank the community I work with and also Akamai. I get a chance to speak at a lot of conferences and work on different projects because I've been at a company that allows me to get out there and that also favors development. So come speak to me about Dash. Come speak to Media Over Quick. That's the new Dash. And I look forward to speaking to you at the party. Thanks a lot.